On page 149 and 150, I have a procedure for creating functions in Excel to read a two-way table. First, please take a look at this graph with me. On the y-axis, we have the solubility of oxygen in water in milligrams per liter, or ppm. And on the x-axis, we have temperature in degrees Celsius. And you can see that in all three curves, the solubility of oxygen decreases quite rapidly as temperature increases. Now, the three curves represent different pressures. The lower curve, which has the green triangular markers, is a pressure of 740 millimeters of mercury. And the curve above it, with the red square markers, is a little higher pressure, 750 millimeters of mercury, and notice the solubility of the gas is a little higher at the higher pressure. At 760 millimeters of mercury, the line with the blue diamond markers, the solubility of oxygen is a little bit greater. So what we have here is that the solubility of this gas depends upon two variables. It's inversely related to the temperature quite strongly, and it's also directly related to the pressure to a lesser extent. In the table on the left, I have a set of temperature values in column B in degrees Celsius, and a set of pressure values in row 25 in millimeters of mercury. We won't worry about the other units of pressure or temperature. We'll focus on degrees Celsius and millimeters of mercury. And at various increments of temperature and pressure, we can read the table and find out the solubility of oxygen. For example, at 15 degrees Celsius, which is row 29, and a pressure of 745 millimeters of mercury, which would be in column D, the point of intersection is 10.4, as you see here, and that is the solubility of oxygen under these conditions. Now, we could read this table manually, but we want to set up some functions in an Excel worksheet such that when we type these values into a cell or select them in a cell, Excel will read the table and return the value of the concentration. Once that happens, we could have another cell use this value of concentration to do other operations on it. In this case, I have a trivial example where we convert solubility in milligrams per liter to molarity. So I have instructions for this here, but let's just go to the spreadsheet and take a look at that. So this workbook is still Excel Worksheets Student, and it'll be on the tab marked O2 Solubility, or O2 Sol. So in cell K26, we have a temperature. It'll be one of these temperatures. For our purposes, we'll choose temperatures at 5-degree intervals between 0 and 40 degrees C, and they're in column B. In cell L26, we have a pressure. I'm choosing 5 millimeter mercury increments between 740 and 760, and those are in row 25. What we'd like Excel to do is read the table for the temperature and pressure we choose, and in cell M26, and return the concentration of oxygen under these conditions. So to do this, we'll have to use a lookup function and a match function. We'll start off, and I'll explain as we go. So in cell M26, we'll start with an equal sign VL, and we'll accept, that is tab, to accept the vertical lookup function. Now, what do we want it to look up? We'll start with the temperature. We want it to look up a temperature, so let's click on cell K26, comma. Where is the table, the array of values that it's going to look in? So we'll select everything from B25 to G34. Now recall that the lookup value in K26 has to be in the leftmost column of our selection, and it is, so we chose B as the leftmost column. Comma. The next thing is we want to tell Excel which column to look in. But we don't want to have to specify every time which to look in because it's going to change as we change our pressures. So now we're going to use what's called a match function. I have the syntax right here. So just type in match and tab to accept. So we want Excel to match our pressure value with one of the values in this row of pressures. So it's much like the lookup function. First we're going to say what value do we want to look up, and we'll click on cell L26. And then where do you want to look it up? Comma. The array of pressure values is between B25 and G25. Now as we're doing this, we don't need absolute references because we're not planning to drag our formula anywhere. Otherwise, if we did, we'd need absolute references. Comma. Now it's asking us what kind of a match do we want. Choose 0, which is an exact match. You can either type it in or double click it. Then you can close this first bracket, and now we need to add another comma, and it's going to ask us what kind of match we want for the lookup function. And we'll say 0, and then close the second bracket. So we're telling Excel to look up the temperature value in K26 and find it in our table whose cell address is between B25 to G34. And which column? Well, we're going to have Excel match the value of pressure in L26 to the eligible pressure values in row 25 from B25 to G25, and we want exact matches. Press enter. So is it reading correctly? So at 20 degrees C and 760 millimeters of mercury, the oxygen solubility is 9.6, and that's correct. So this part works. Great. That looks pretty handy. Once the concentration of oxygen is read from the table and returned to cell M26, we could use that for any calculation. I have a simplistic example here. Let's convert this milligrams per liter to a moles per liter. So in cell N26, we'll write the formula equals M26 divided by 32,000. Enter. And that gives us the molar solubility of oxygen instead of the milligram per liter solubility of oxygen. We can make this spreadsheet a little more user-friendly. Instead of having to type temperature values and pressure values into cells K and L26, we could have a list that we select from. And here's how we do that. I'm going to start by selecting cell K26 where the temperature value is. Go to the Data tab and choose Data Validation. Now I'm using a laptop, so my icons are a little compressed looking. If you have a full-size monitor, they may look a little different, but if you search, you'll find this tool, Data Validation. On the Settings tab, Validation Criteria, it's asking us what kind of values would we allow in this cell. Do we want any value? No, we're going to choose List. And the neat part about doing this is then we can click in this source box and scroll over the values of temperature that we want to allow. We'll choose from 5 to 40 and say OK. Having done that, we see this list arrow beside K26, and in it you can select any temperature that you put in your list. And notice how the solubility of oxygen updates every time we change it. That's kind of handy. Let's do the same thing for cell L26 for our pressures. On the Data tab, under Data Validation, on the Settings tab, Validation Criteria, Allow, again choose a list. Now this time in the source box, click and then scroll over the allowable pressure values that are in row 25 and say OK. And now we have a list box for pressures that we can choose from as well. Very nice. Alright, we can make this a little more user-friendly still. We could have it so that as we select a temperature, that particular row of values of oxygen solubilities highlight so we can identify them quickly. We can do the same thing for pressure. I'll illustrate here. So here's my spreadsheet. If I choose a different temperature, let's go to 10 degrees, notice how the row of values corresponding to 10 degrees Celsius lights up. Likewise for pressure, I'll choose a different pressure, 755. That column lights up. And furthermore, the point of intersection, our return value, in this case 11.7, also lights up to make it easy to see. So we can add that to our spreadsheet as well. Let's go back to our spreadsheet. First we'll add highlighting to the row of solubilities corresponding to the temperature we choose. To do this, we need to select the entire table. It'll be from B25 to G34. On the Home tab, choose Conditional Formatting, New Rule. Scroll down to Use a Formula to determine which cells to format. And in the Format Values, where this formula is true, we're going to type in this formula exactly as it's written. I'll explain a little bit as we go. It'll be equals bracket $B25 equals $K $26 close bracket. What we're saying is absolute reference to cell K26 where the temperature value is, and absolute reference to column B where the temperature values are, but relative reference to any row, because as we choose the temperature corresponding to cell K26, it could bring us to different rows. Now we want to format that, so select Format, and I'm going to choose green. You can choose which color you like, and say OK, and OK. And notice we have the row in which temperature 25 degrees Celsius lies is highlighted green. Let's check and see if it changes as we change the temperature. Good, it seems to be working. Alright, let's do the same thing now for the pressure. We want to have a column of pressure values highlight as we change the pressure in cell L26. So again, start by selecting the entire table, B25 through G34. Go to Conditional Formatting, New Rule. Use a formula to determine which cells to format. Click in Format Values where this formula is true and type in this equation here. It's going to be equals bracket $25 equals $L26 close bracket. So we're saying we have an absolute reference to cell L26 where the pressure is, and we have a relative reference to any column, but we're fixing row 25 where our pressure values are. Choose a format. I'm going to choose a light orange for mine. Say OK and OK, and it looks like it's working. Let's change the pressure and see if the highlighted column changes with it. Good, it does. Now I should mention, if you run into a problem doing this, select the entire table, go to Conditional Formatting, Manage Rules, and you'll see a list of the functions that we've built. Just select one. You can choose to edit or delete. If you edit them, then click Apply and OK, or delete and start again. Let's now add a function that will highlight the intersection of the row and the column with a yellow color or some color of your choosing. So we start again by selecting the entire table B25 to G34. Conditional Formatting, New Rule. Use a formula to determine which cells to format. Click in the box Format Values where this formula is true. Now you want to type in this formula on the right. equals, open bracket, $B25 equals $K $26, close bracket, times. Times means the intersection of the row and column. Open bracket, B $25 equals $L $26, close bracket. So we're saying the absolute reference to cell K26 where the temperature is, and we have an absolute reference to column B where the temperature values are, but any row. Point of intersection, $L $26 is an absolute reference to this pressure value, and we're saying match it up with any value in row 25. There's an absolute reference to row 25, but any column. We need to select a format. I'm going to choose yellow and say OK and OK. And it's highlighted yellow. Let's see if this will change as we change the temperature. Let's go to a lower temperature, about 10 degrees. That looks good. We'll change our pressure, 745. It's working very nicely. So an easy way to highlight for recognition in a table. Very nice feature in Excel.